how's it going? It's Sam Frost here, back with some more digital marketing advice. Now in today's video, I want to talk about display advertising as opposed to search advertising, so the kind of ads you might run through Google's display network within your Google Ads account, and why it is that display ads often have a high bounce rate and a sort of worse engagement than you would normally see with search advertising. So if you go and look at your, say, channel report in Google Analytics, you'll often find that your display ads have much higher bounce rate, lower time on site, lower pages per session, and so on. So why is that? There's really a few key reasons I'll discuss in this video. So the first is that the fundamental nature of display advertising is very different to search, both paid and organic. So if I go on Google and search something like cheap car insurance quotes, I'm going on there because I'm looking for something in particular. I want a car insurance quote and I want a cheap one because insurance prices are crazy these days. I'm in that active sort of intent research buying phase basically. So I am actually looking for something. There's a demand on my end as the searcher that needs to be fulfilled. Display advertising is the total opposite. So display advertising, I'm browsing the internet, I'm going on the news websites that I frequent, or blogs or forums or whatever it is, and I'm browsing around and I'm not necessarily looking for a product or a service, but something flashes up in front of me, a banner ad that captures my attention, and I think, hey, that looks interesting, and I click through. And so it's more about trying to almost generate and create demand in the prospective customer's eye, rather than fulfilling something that's already there. It's a bit like driving down the highway and you see a billboard. You're not really looking out for whatever was on that billboard, but it captures your attention and you think, oh, that's a bit of me, I'm going to look that up when I get home. Or if it's maybe an ad that's a billboard promoting turn off at the next intersection to come to the store, or whatever the case may be, you might do it not because you went on that journey to find that ultimate destination it's promoted in the billboard, but because your attention has been captured and directed a certain way. And so that's one of the reasons why with display advertising you'll often find the sort of worse interaction, because the people who are clicking on the ads are not really coming to your website because they're super engaged in the buying or research process. Now, it might be based on some of the targeting that they are generally in the market for something. That's where you're looking at things like Google's in-market targeting, for example. But equally, it might just be that they are actually in that buying phase, but not right at that moment in time. So it's very different to search. So even if I'm generally thinking about purchasing a new car at the moment, I might be in market for a new car. If I'm just browsing the news website like stuff.co.nz here in New Zealand, or Trade Me, an auction site, I might not actually be looking for a car at that precise moment in time, even though I am generally in market for one. And so that's one of the reasons why the interactivity is often worse, because you're kind of capturing this demand, or these prospective customers or click-throughs that aren't really necessarily looking for what it is you're promoting at that point in time. There's a general interest, but it's not as deep and as targeted as the interest that comes from someone who is searching. So that's one of the reasons. So people basically, on a bit of a whim, because it looks a bit interesting, click through, oh, that's maybe a bit of me, let's have a look at that. And because there is less intent there versus a regular search, whether that's paid or organic, they're much more likely to then click away quickly if it's not interesting. So there's less of that active exploration of your website. So that's one reason. A second reason to consider, and quite an important thing as well, is that targeting with display advertising is very, very different. So search advertising, as long as you get your targeting right, it's much more straightforward. It's really around the keywords or sort of search phrases or terms that your prospective customers are using, and you get a good understanding for what people are searching, and then you go and you advertise on those terms. Whereas with display ads, you've got to target on things like demographics, interests. There are things like Google's in-market audiences, there's lookalike or similar audiences, all this different world of sort of audience targeting, but it is very different. And it's a kind of broader type of targeting because it lumps people in to the same kind of category, whether or not they're actually in market properly at that given point in time or not. And so just because I'm interested in mountain bikes, for example, and you're able to access that sort of a pool of males aged 18 to 45 who live in New Zealand who are interested in mountain bikes, it's still potentially too broad, if that makes sense. And so the sort of broader inherent nature of display advertising makes it less likely that you're going to reach people who are really switched on to what it is you're promoting. What you're hoping is that as you cast the wider net, as long as it's cast with some degree of precision, that actually what's going to happen is that you scoop up enough genuinely interested prospects who turn into customers, or at least turn into leads. And so it's less precise than the sort of sniper approach you can take with search advertising, but what you're hoping is that even though the targeting is a bit broader, you still have enough precision behind it, or the platforms you're using like Google Ads are able to pick up on enough sort of machine learning signals through conversion data that they can go and find you people who are well enough qualified to become leads or customers. It's just that what you tend to get as well is a lot of the sort of chaff that comes with it. So it's like doing a, big scoop with a fishing net, and there's a couple of good fish in there, but a lot of little tiddlers that you've got to throw back into the ocean because they're not anywhere near what you were looking for. And basically the same principle is applying with display advertising. And so yeah, you're scooping up a lot of these lesser qualified, lesser interested individuals, and the result is they hit your site. It's not really what they were after. They clicked out of some sort of potential interest, and then they click away because it just, they weren't the right person at the right time, if that makes sense. Now, the final point to bear in mind as well around why display ad traffic tends to engage much worse than search ad traffic is that there is a lot of fraudulent and low quality traffic in the display advertising space. And there's a lot more detail I could go into about this. I'm not an ad fraud specialist or researcher or anything like that, but I do know for a fact that there is a lot of very average inventory and a lot of fairly dodgy practices in display advertising. So you've got everything from, say, mobile app ad advertising. So by default with Google display ads, your ads are opted into the mobile app placements as well. So if you have a mobile app that you've developed, you can monetize it via ads in the apps. You've probably seen them. And what will happen is your ad as an advertiser can run in these apps, things like games or calculator apps or whatever it might be. And someone either clicks on the ad by mistake, or they give their iPad to the kid and the kid clicks on the ad, or there might even be some fraudulent click farm type activity going on. And what that does is you wind up with this sort of overinflated click-through rate and click count that looks kind of impressive at a top line level, but when you dig into it and you go and look at the placement report, it's all junk traffic coming off mobile app ads. It's one of the reasons why I typically always recommend you to switch off mobile app ad placements by using the Google Ads editor. I'll leave a link in the video description to another video that goes into detail about how you can do that. But it's just one example of sort of fraudulent, low quality, or otherwise junk traffic and practices that can come through on the display advertising side of things. There's way more to it than that. There are things like made for display ad websites, or people call them made for AdSense websites, which are basically made not to be genuine sites, but to look like genuine sites, to opt into display ad networks like Google AdSense or other third-party networks on the publisher side. So you build websites that get traffic through, say, scraping content and presenting it as something original, or creating huge amounts of content with AI programs and publishing it. And then you hope to run display ads as a publisher where your ads might appear as an advertiser based on contextual targeting and audience interest and so on. And then the website creator earns money off those ads, but there's never any intent to kind of drive genuine human engagement or relevant interest on that website. It's just all about getting ads on there, driving some traffic and getting people clicking. And that's before you even look at genuinely fraudulent practices in terms of bot clicks and different issues with things like ads, say, appearing only in a few slots on a page, and then when a bot visitor arrives, they're hidden, but a whole load more ads appear to human users. As a user on LinkedIn who I'd recommend you check out, Dr. Augustine Fu, who runs a company called Fu-lytics or Fu Analytics. I can't quite remember the name off the top of my head. It's a great resource he's got on some very sort of dodgy practices that happen in the display advertising space and how you can protect yourself from them as well. And there are a lot of other tools you can use, things like PPC Protect, that might help as well. And so if we go back and look at why display advertising can be much worse in terms of interactivity and engagement and performance than you see from search advertising, really in my view there are three key reasons. The first is that the general intent and sort of purpose of display advertising is not going to yield as qualified or as interested traffic as you'd see with search advertising, because it's demand creation versus demand fulfillment. The second is that targeting of display advertising is not as precise as search. And then the third piece is this kind of general issue around low quality placements, low quality traffic, bot traffic, click farms, all those kind of things that result in almost fraudulent inventory in effect being sold to advertisers through third-party advertising platforms that all connect in, and you as the advertiser, you think your ads are showing in genuine locations, but they're showing in low-quality placements that aren't going to yield any quality traffic, any genuine traffic. And there's a whole sort of deeper world you can investigate around that, and I'll leave some links in the video description. Now, does this mean you shouldn't use display advertising? No, I've seen some great results for businesses that I've assisted on a consulting basis, in-house jobs I've had in the past, all sorts of things. I've seen some really good results with display advertising, but To be brutally honest, if you take a lazy approach to it and sort of, go and set up a Google display ad campaign and just leave Google to do everything by default and do very broad targeting and don't check your placements and don't check how the traffic interacts on your site and whether you're getting genuine conversions and so on, then you can get some very average results. So yeah, hopefully you find that helpful, just a genuine sort of general breakdown of why I think that display advertising traffic has a few of these challenges with respect to engagement. If you've got any questions, please do let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.